In this video, I'm going to show you how I made a utensil tray out of walnut and how I epoxy inlaid the shape of each utensil in the bottom. The first step in the process was breaking down the material. I started at the bandsaw and then refined the pieces to their final thickness with the planer. The next step was to cut out the shape of the utensils. I wanted the handle of each utensil to be the same distance from the left side of the container, so I went ahead and cut that on the table saw. After tracing out the shape of each utensil, I cut out the other side of the handle on the table saw, and then finished up the top of each utensil on the bandsaw. Once I had the rough shape of each utensil cut out on the bandsaw, I fine-tuned the shape with the spindle sander. Now I wanted to make a quick note about the fork. When I first started cutting out the fork, I thought that I was going to have each of the prongs of the fork as part of the pouring, but that just turned too difficult on the bandsaw. I don't have a scroll saw, so I was worried that each of the small pieces of wood left over were going to get ripped away by the bandsaw, and I didn't have a good way to get a good clean cut. So I decided to get a more abstract version of the fork, and it's just a simple outline of an overall fork without the specific tongs. After the top part of each utensil was cut out and fine-tuned, I went ahead and made the overall bottom portion. The bottom of the panel is made up of a solid portion that is 1/8 of an inch thick, making the total thickness of each bottom panel 1/4 inch. Once I had the thickness of the bottom piece dialed in, I glued the pieces together before starting on epoxy. After using tuck tape to create a dam for the epoxy, I mixed it for 5 minutes and poured it into each of the utensil shapes. After the epoxy had cured, I ran each piece through the planer to remove the bulk of the material and then sanded them up to 2000 grit. The final step was to make the overall frame for the utensil tray. So I milled up the pieces to be 1/4 inch thick and 2 inches high. For the overall frame, I decided to use a miter joint because I don't think the joint will be under a lot of stress. But if a miter joint doesn't seem strong enough for you, you can add splines to the miter joint to strengthen it up, or you could just do a box joint and that would be a whole lot stronger. After gluing up the frame in a band clamp, I started on the central partitions. The central partitions were just measured to fit. I used a 5-gallon pail to cut out a semicircle section so that the utensils are easier to grab. After I was done glue up on the frame, I applied finish, and I used Osmo Poly-X oil. And although this is a really good finish, I think if I would do it again, I would do a polyurethane, as I think it would wear better in the long term. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any comments, please leave them below, and I'll see you on the next one.